entitled parents pet sitter destroyed my house, so I got him arrested. The first thing I noticed when I pulled into my driveway Sunday evening wasn't the beer cans scattered across my front lawn or the tire tracks gouged into my flower bed. It was the silence. My two golden retrievers, Max and Luna, always barked the second they heard my car. Always. After 12 grueling hours at the hospital following a 16-hour shift the day before, hearing their excited welcome was the only thing keeping me upright. But my house sat eerily quiet, and my stomach dropped. I'd hired Jake Morrison, my neighbor's 19-year-old son, to watch Max and Luna for the weekend. The Morrisons lived in the fancy colonial 3 houses down, the one with the perfectly manicured lawn and the BMW in the driveway. When Jake offered to pet sit for $50, I'd been grateful. Working double shifts as a single mom meant I rarely left my dogs overnight, but my sister's wedding was non-negotiable. Now, staring at what used to be my front door hanging crooked on its hinges, I felt my hands start shaking. Max? Luna? I called out, fumbling with my keys. The lock was broken, the door swinging open with barely a touch. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw inside. My living room looked like a tornado had hit it. My coffee table, the one I'd saved 3 months to buy after finally leaving my ex, was split down the middle. Red Solo cups and empty bottles covered every surface. Something that looked suspiciously like vomit stained my couch, the same couch where I'd held my dogs during thunderstorms, where we built our little safe haven together. Max. Luna. My voice cracked as panic set in. That's when I heard it, a faint whimpering coming from upstairs. I ran, taking the steps 2 at a time, following the sound to my bedroom closet. The door was wedged shut with a chair. I yanked the chair away and my heart shattered. Max and Luna were huddled together in the corner, shaking. Luna had clearly had accidents, something that hadn't happened since she was a puppy. Max's usually bright eyes were dull with stress, and both dogs cowered when they saw me, as if they expected more chaos. Oh, babies, I whispered, dropping to my knees. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. As they slowly recognized me and crept forward, I surveyed my bedroom. My jewelry box was empty, including my grandmother's ring, the only thing of value I owned. My laptop was gone. Even my tip jar from the kitchen counter, where I'd been saving for Luna's upcoming vet visit, had been cleaned out. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thanks for the sick party pad. Your dogs were being annoying, so we put them somewhere safe, lol. I screenshotted it immediately, my nurse training kicking in. Document everything. Evidence matters. But it was the next text that made my blood boil. P.S. Found some interesting stuff in your medicine cabinet. Thanks for the party favors. Winking face. I raced to the bathroom. My prescription bottles, leftover pain medication from when I'd broken my wrist last year, anxiety medication I'd been prescribed after leaving my abusive ex, were completely empty. Jake hadn't just thrown a party in my house. He drugged my dogs into submission, stolen my belongings, and taken controlled substances. In the one place I'd worked so hard to make safe. I looked down at Max and Luna, still trembling against my legs, and felt something cold and determined settle in my chest. Jake Morrison had picked the wrong single mother to mess with. I spent the next 2 hours documenting everything with my phone camera, fighting back tears as I cataloged the destruction room by room. The kitchen looked like a food fight had exploded, my cabinets hung open, dishes smashed across the floor, and something sticky coated my countertops. Even my refrigerator had been raided, with spoiled food left scattered everywhere. Max and Luna followed me from room to room, pressing against my legs like they were afraid I'd disappear again. Every few minutes, Luna would whimper at sudden noises, the house settling, a car passing outside, and my heart broke a little more. By 9 p.m., I had 47 photos and 3 videos documenting the damage. I'd found more evidence too, a baggie with white residue under my couch, cigarette burns on my dining room table, and a hole punched through my hallway wall. Someone had even used my bathroom mirror to write something obscene in what I desperately hoped was lipstick. I was estimating at least $4,000 in damages when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in pearls and a pristine white blazer. Mrs. Morrison. Jake's mother. I opened the door, and her expression immediately shifted from practiced politeness to barely concealed disgust as she took in my appearance. I was still in my scrubs, hair falling out of my ponytail, probably looking as exhausted as I felt. I believe there's been some sort of misunderstanding, she said, not even glancing at the obvious damage behind me. Jake mentioned you were upset about something? Upset? I gestured to my destroyed living room. Mrs. Morrison, your son threw a massive party that. Now, let's not get dramatic. She stepped inside without being invited, her heels crunching on broken glass. Kids will be kids. A little mess is hardly worth getting worked up over. My mouth fell open. A little mess? He stole my medication. My grandmother's ring. My dogs were locked in a closet for hours. My voice was rising, but I didn't care. There's thousands of dollars in damage. Mrs. Morrison's laugh was sharp and cold. Oh, honey. Do you have any proof Jake was responsible? Because from what I understand, you left a teenager alone in your house for an entire weekend. Some might say that was poor judgment. The implication hit me like a slap. She was already building a defense, painting me as the irresponsible one. I have text messages from him, I said, pulling out my phone. Text messages can be faked so easily these days. She examined her manicured nails. And even if Jake did have a few friends over, well, accidents happen. We'd be happy to help with minor cleaning costs, of course. Maybe $200? $200. For $4,000 in damages. I want full compensation for everything that was destroyed and stolen, I said firmly. And I want Jake to stay away from my property. Mrs. Morrison's fake smile vanished. I'd be very careful about making accusations you can't prove, dear. The Morrisons have lived in this neighborhood for 15 years. We know people. Important people. She leaned closer, her voice dropping. Single mothers who work nights and leave teenagers unsupervised? Well, that raises questions about judgment. About fitness. The threat was crystal clear. In my state, even false accusations of neglect could trigger an investigation that would destroy my career. Think carefully about your next move, she continued, smoothing her blazer. Some battles aren't worth fighting. Especially for people in your position. She left me standing in my destroyed doorway, her words echoing in my head. She'd just made a crucial mistake, though. She'd underestimated exactly how far a nurse would go to protect her family. After Mrs. Morrison left, I sat on my ruined couch with Max and Luna pressed against me, her threats echoing in my head. People in your position, the condescension in her voice made my skin crawl, but it was the implied threat about my fitness as a mother that really terrified me. I didn't have children, but Mrs. Morrison didn't know that. She assumed I did, probably because of how I'd referred to Max and Luna as my family when arranging the pet sitting. In her mind, she was threatening to report me as an unfit parent. The fact that she jumped straight to that nuclear option told me everything I needed to know about how the Morrisons operated. But I had bigger problems than her intimidation tactics. My phone rang at 10:47 p.m. Unknown number. Hello? Hey, is this the nurse with the cool house? The voice was young, male, slurred. Jake said you were chill about parties and stuff. Who is this? Oh, sorry. I'm Brad. I was at your place Saturday night, awesome party, by the way. Listen, I think I left my wallet there. Can I swing by and grab it? My heart started pounding. You were at the party Jake threw at my house? Yeah. Dude, that was insane. I've never seen anyone go through that much product in one night. Jake's got serious connections, you know? Anyway, about my wallet. What do you mean, product? You know. He lowered his voice conspiratorially. The stuff Jake was selling. Premium quality. Half the lacrosse team was there, plus some college kids. Made bank, I bet. I grabbed a pen, scribbling notes. Jake was selling at my house? Oh shit, are you not cool with that? Jake said you were his business partner or something. Said you provided the, starting inventory from your medicine cabinet. The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. Jake hadn't just stolen my prescription medications, he'd used them as party drugs, telling people I was involved. If anyone got hurt, if anyone overdosed, the trail would lead straight back to my house. To me. Listen, I said carefully, about your wallet, what does it look like? Black leather, has my license and credit cards. Oh, and my student ID, Westfield College. Brad Morrison. Morrison. This kid was related to Jake, probably a cousin. I'll look for it, I lied. Can you text me your contact info? After he hung up, I immediately started searching. It took 20 minutes, but I found the wallet wedged between my couch cushions. Inside was Brad Morrison's college ID, 2 credit cards, and something even more interesting, a business card for Morrison and Associates Legal Group. The same last name as Jake. This wasn't a coincidence. I photographed everything in the wallet, then Googled Morrison and Associates. The law firm's website showed a distinguished older man as the founding partner, Robert Morrison. Jake's father, most likely, which made Brad either his nephew or cousin. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through their client testimonials and case histories. This wasn't some small-time family practice, they specialized in corporate defense and had successfully represented several high-profile clients in criminal cases. No wonder Mrs. Morrison had been so confident about threatening me. Her husband probably made more in a month than I earned all year, and they had the legal connections to bury me in court costs even if I was right. But as I stared at Brad's business card, a new plan began forming. The Morrisons thought they were untouchable because of their money and connections. They were counting on me being too intimidated, too poor, too isolated to fight back effectively. They'd forgotten that nurses are trained to handle emergencies. We document everything, we follow protocols, and we don't panic under pressure. Most importantly, we know that the right evidence presented to the right people can save lives, or destroy them. I picked up my phone and started making a very different kind of call. The first call I made was to my sister Emma, the only family I had left who might actually help. Sarah? It's almost midnight, what's wrong? Em, I need you to listen carefully. Do you still have connections at the DA's office from when you worked there? Emma had been a paralegal before switching to teaching, but she'd maintained friendships with several prosecutors. More importantly, she was the only person who knew the full truth about why I'd moved to this neighborhood after leaving my ex. What kind of connections are we talking about? Sarah, you're scaring me. I explained everything, the party, the damage, Mrs. Morrison's threats, and most crucially, what Brad had revealed about Jake selling drugs at my house. Jesus Christ, Emma breathed. They used your home as a drug distribution point and now they're threatening you? Sarah, this is serious. If someone traces those pills back to your DA number. That's why I'm calling. I need to get ahead of this before they spin it like I was involved. Okay. Let me think. I could hear her pacing. My friend Marcus Chen is an ADA who specializes in drug cases. But Sarah, if you're going to do this, you need to be absolutely sure. The Morrisons will come at you with everything they have. They already are. Mrs. Morrison basically threatened to report me for child neglect. But you don't have kids. She doesn't know that. She saw me in scrubs, saw my pet supplies, and assumed. The point is, she went straight for the nuclear option. These people will destroy me if I don't act first. Emma was quiet for a long moment. I'll call Marcus first thing Monday morning. But Sarah? Document everything. And I mean everything. If this goes sideways. I know. I've already started. After hanging up, I spent the next 3 hours creating a timeline. Every text message screenshotted and backed up to cloud storage. Photos of the damage uploaded with timestamps. I even recorded a video walking through each room, narrating what I was seeing. But it was 3 a.m. when I discovered something that changed everything. I was cleaning up the kitchen, trying to make the space livable again, when I found a phone wedged behind my refrigerator. Not mine, this was an expensive iPhone in a designer case. When I pressed the home button, the lock screen showed dozens of unread messages. The most recent ones made my blood run cold. Jake, where TF are you? Tommy's in the ER. Dude, the cops came to Brandon's house asking about Saturday. My dad's gonna kill me if he finds out about the pills. Jake, you need to call me back right now. Someone was in the hospital. The timeline was Monday night, Sunday was when I'd returned home, which meant someone had gotten sick or hurt Sunday night or Monday, likely from whatever Jake had been selling at my house. My nursing instincts kicked in. If someone had taken contaminated pills or the wrong dosage, if they'd mixed my anxiety medication with alcohol. I grabbed my laptop and started researching. Westfield College, where Brad Morrison was a student according to his ID, had a campus newspaper with online archives. It took some digging, but I found it in Monday's digital edition. Student hospitalized after weekend incident. Westfield sophomore Tommy Chen was admitted to University Hospital Sunday night after what campus officials are calling a reaction to unknown substances. Chen remains in stable condition. The incident is under investigation by campus police. Tommy Chen. The same last name as Emma's prosecutor friend Marcus Chen. This was getting more complicated by the minute. But as I stared at the article, I realized this wasn't just a complication, it was leverage. If Jake had sold contaminated drugs that hospitalized someone, especially someone connected to a prosecutor's family, the Morrisons' threats suddenly seemed a lot less scary. I looked down at Max and Luna, finally sleeping peacefully at my feet, and felt something shift inside me. The Morrisons had declared war on the wrong person. It was time to show them what a cornered nurse could do. I barely slept that night, and when morning came, I had a decision to make. The smart thing would be to call Emma first, get Marcus Chen's advice before doing anything else. The safe thing would be to wait and see how this all played out. But I'd learned something important during my years with my abusive ex. Sometimes waiting just gives the other person more time to destroy you. I was still debating my next move when my doorbell rang at 7 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw a man in an expensive suit who looked like an older version of Jake. Behind him stood Mrs. Morrison and Jake himself, whose cocky smirk made my blood pressure spike. I opened the door with the chain still attached. "Can I help you?" "Miss," the man paused, clearly not remembering my last name despite living 3 houses away for the past 2 years. "I'm Robert Morrison, Jake's father. I believe we need to clear up some misunderstandings." "The only misunderstanding is your son thinking my house was his personal party venue." Jake stepped forward with that entitled swagger I'd seen too many times in the ER from rich kids who thought rules didn't apply to them. "Look, lady, you said I could have friends over. I said you could have a friend help you if needed. Not throw a rave." "That's not how Jake remembers it," Robert Morrison interrupted smoothly. "And frankly, leaving a teenager alone for an entire weekend sends mixed messages about boundaries." There it was again, the subtle blame shifting that made everything my fault. I was starting to recognize the family pattern. "Your son stole prescription medication from my bathroom." "That's a very serious accusation." Robert's voice carried the tone of someone used to intimidating people in courtrooms. "Do you have proof beyond circumstantial evidence? Because making false claims about controlled substances could be considered filing a false police report." My heart hammered, but I kept my voice steady. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Morrison?" "I'm simply pointing out the legal reality. Jake has witnesses who will testify that you gave him explicit permission to use your house however he saw fit." Multiple witnesses. The coordinated lies were already in place. Of course they were. Mrs. Morrison spoke up, her voice saccharine. "We're prepared to offer $500 for any minor damages, plus we'll ensure this doesn't happen again." That's quite generous, considering the ambiguous circumstances. $500. For $4,000 in damages and my traumatized dogs. "I need to think about it," I said, already knowing I was lying. "Of course. But don't think too long." Robert's smile was all teeth. These situations can escalate quickly if people make poor choices. Especially when there are questions about judgment and stability. After they left, I sat in my kitchen trying to process what had just happened. They'd essentially offered me a pittance while threatening legal retaliation if I didn't accept. Worse, they'd obviously coached Jake and his friends to lie about having permission. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop trying to blame Jake for your own bad choices. Everyone knows what kind of person you are." Then another, "Single women who work nights, people talk." And another, "Your dog seemed pretty stressed when we found them." Makes you wonder what else goes on in that house. My hands started shaking as I realized what was happening. They weren't just threatening me legally, they were starting a whisper campaign in the neighborhood. Painting me as unstable, irresponsible, maybe even dangerous to my own pets. I thought about the Morrisons' social connections, their money, their ability to make my life hell in ways I probably hadn't even imagined yet. Then I looked at Max and Luna, who were staying close to me like they were afraid I might disappear again. I picked up the phone I'd found behind my refrigerator, the one with all those panicked messages about Tommy Chen being in the hospital. The Morrisons wanted to play games? Fine. But they'd forgotten that nurses know exactly how to handle emergencies. And this was about to become their emergency, not mine. I called in sick to work for the first time in 8 months. My supervisor, Janet, didn't question it when I explained about the break-in. She'd seen enough nurses deal with home emergencies to know when someone genuinely needed time. "Take care of yourself, Sarah. We'll manage the floor." What she didn't know was that I planned to spend the day doing something that could either save my career or end it completely. The phone I'd found belonged to someone named Dylan, according to the contact list. Most of the panicked messages were from numbers saved with just first names, typical teenage paranoia about parents checking phones. But the message about Tommy Chen being in the hospital had come from Marcus at 11:47 p.m. Sunday night. My stomach dropped. Marcus Chen, the same prosecutor Emma knew? It seemed too much of a coincidence, but I needed to be sure before I made any moves. I spent the morning diving deeper into social media, cross-referencing names from Dylan's contacts with Jake's Instagram followers. It was tedious detective work, but my nursing background had taught me patience with details that others might miss. That's when I found Jake's Snapchat story from Saturday night. The videos were still up. Apparently Jake was too arrogant to delete evidence. I watched in growing horror as he filmed himself in my kitchen, holding up my prescription bottles like trophies. "Look what the nurse left me," he laughed, rattling the pills. "This is gonna be a legendary night." The next video showed my living room packed with teenagers. Someone had spray-painted Jake's house on my wall, something I'd missed during my initial damage assessment because it was behind where my bookshelf had been overturned. The timestamp showed 1:23 a.m. Sunday morning. But it was the final video that made me screenshot everything immediately. Jake was sitting on my couch with a girl who looked maybe 16, both of them clearly intoxicated. "Say hi to Dylan's phone," Jake slurred, and I realized he was recording on the device I'd found. "We're about to make some serious cash." The video showed Jake dividing pills from my prescription bottles into small baggies. He'd mixed everything together, anxiety medication, pain pills, even some old antibiotics I'd forgotten about. Watching him create those dangerous combinations made my professional training scream warnings about drug interactions and overdoses. The girl giggled and said something I couldn't quite make out, but Jake's response was crystal clear. Don't worry, babe. If anyone asks, we'll just say the nurse was selling to us. Who's gonna believe some broke single mom over me? My hands were shaking as I saved the video. This wasn't just evidence of theft anymore, this was proof of intent to frame me for drug dealing. I was still processing this when my doorbell rang again. Through the peephole, I saw a woman I didn't recognize, mid-40s, professional clothing, carrying a briefcase. Sarah Mitchell? I'm Detective Angela Rodriguez with the County Sheriff's Office. I'd like to ask you some questions about prescription medications that were reported stolen from your residence. My blood turned to ice. Someone had already called the police, but not to report Jake's theft. They'd reported me as a suspected drug dealer. I opened the door with my phone still in my hand, Jake's incriminating videos ready to play. Detective Rodriguez, I'm so glad you're here. I have quite a bit of evidence to show you about what really happened this weekend. The detective's eyebrows raised slightly. Evidence? Most people in your situation prefer to speak with an attorney first. Most people in my situation don't have video of the actual crime being committed, I said, stepping aside to let her in. Would you like to see how Jake Morrison really spent his weekend? For the first time since Sunday night, I felt like I might actually win this fight. Detective Rodriguez stepped into my living room, and I watched her take in the destruction with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen plenty of crime scenes. Her expression remained neutral, but I caught her slight wince when she spotted the hole punched through my hallway wall. Before we begin, she said, pulling out a small recorder, I need to inform you that you're not under arrest, but anything you say can be used in court. You have the right to have an attorney present. I understand. But detective, I think you need to see this first. I pulled up Jake's Snapchat story on my phone. This was posted Saturday night during the party. She watched the videos in silence, her expression growing darker with each clip. When Jake's voice came through saying, we'll just say the nurse was selling to us, Detective Rodriguez looked up sharply. Ms. Mitchell, how did you obtain these videos? They're public on his Snapchat story. Anyone can see them. I showed her the timestamps. There are dozens of witnesses who could have screenshotted these before they expire. And this phone? She gestured to Dylan's iPhone, which I'd left on my coffee table. I found it behind my refrigerator while cleaning up the damage. It is text messages that suggest someone was hospitalized after taking pills that were distributed here Saturday night. Detective Rodriguez's jaw tightened. We're aware of the hospitalization. Tommy Chen, 19 years old, admitted to University Hospital with what doctors are calling a dangerous drug interaction. His father contacted our office when Tommy said he'd gotten the pills from a nurse. My stomach dropped. His father? Assistant District Attorney Marcus Chen. He's very motivated to see this case resolved. The irony hit me like a truck. Marcus Chen, Emma's contact who was supposed to help me, was the father of the kid who'd been hospitalized with Jake's contaminated pill cocktail. Instead of being my salvation, he was probably leading the charge to prosecute me. Detective, I never gave anyone permission to take my medication. I hired Jake Morrison to pet sit my dogs while I was at my sister's wedding. I had the original text conversation where we discussed his responsibilities. We'll need to see those messages. But Ms. Mitchell, I have to tell you, we've received multiple complaints about your conduct. 3 separate witnesses claim you gave explicit permission for the party and provided the medication voluntarily. They're lying. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Jake stole those pills from my bathroom. He mixed anxiety medication with pain relievers and antibiotics. Any nurse would know how dangerous that combination could be. That's actually part of the problem, Detective Rodriguez said gently. Your medical background makes this case more complex. The DA's office is treating this as potential illegal distribution by someone who should have known better. I felt the walls closing in. The Morrisons hadn't just coached witnesses, they'd turned my professional credentials against me. My nursing license, which I'd worked so hard to earn, was now being used as evidence that I was a more sophisticated criminal. There's something else, the detective continued. Jake Morrison came to the station this morning with his attorney. He's claiming you hired him not just to pet sit, but to help distribute medication to his college friends. He says you've been running this operation for months. The room spun slightly. Jake wasn't just denying responsibility, he was painting me as the mastermind of a drug ring. That's completely false. I can prove it. I hope so, Ms. Mitchell. Because right now, the evidence is stacked heavily against you. Rich kid with no priors versus a single woman with access to controlled substances. She stood up, handing me her card. I'd strongly suggest getting an attorney. This is about to get much worse before it gets better. After she left, I sat among the ruins of my living room, finally understanding the true scope of what I was facing. The Morrisons weren't just trying to avoid paying for damages. They were trying to destroy my entire life. The next morning, I woke up to my neighbor Mrs. Chen pounding on my door at 6 a.m. Not Marcus Chen the prosecutor, this was elderly Mrs. Chen from next door, the sweet woman who always complimented my flower garden. Sarah, open up. Her voice was frantic. I stumbled to the door in my pajamas, Max and Luna trailing behind me. Mrs. Chen's face was tear-streaked, her usually perfect silver hair disheveled. They took Pepper, she sobbed. Animal control came at dawn. They said there were reports of dangerous animals in the neighborhood. My blood ran cold. Pepper was Mrs. Chen's ancient corgi, barely able to climb stairs let alone pose a threat to anyone. What kind of reports? They said multiple neighbors complained about aggressive dogs attacking children. Said there was an investigation into animal neglect and abuse in this area. She gripped my arm. Sarah, they mentioned your address specifically. Said the investigation started with reports about your pets. I stared at her in horror as the pieces clicked together. The Morrisons weren't just going after me professionally, they were targeting my dogs. The subtle threats Mrs. Morrison had made about Max and Luna being stressed suddenly made perfect sense. Mrs. Chen, did they say which neighbors complained? The Morrison family was mentioned as the primary reporters. They said they'd witnessed your dogs being mistreated and were concerned about a pattern of animal abuse in the area. My hands started shaking. Max and Luna pressed closer to my legs, as if sensing the new threat. I need to make some phone calls, I told Mrs. Chen. Don't worry, we're going to get Pepper back. But even as I said it, I knew this was escalating beyond anything I'd imagined. The Morrisons were systematically dismantling my life, using their connections to attack me from every angle. After Mrs. Chen left, I called animal control immediately. This is Sarah Mitchell. I understand there's been some kind of investigation. Ms. Mitchell, the officer interrupted, we need you to bring your dogs in for a welfare check today. We've received serious complaints about neglect and possible abuse. That's impossible. My dogs are perfectly healthy and well cared for. The reports indicate otherwise. We have witnesses claiming your pets were locked in a closet for extended periods, that they showed signs of distress and fear. One report suggests possible sedation or drugging of the animals. My heart sank. They were twisting what Jake had done to my dogs during the party, making it sound like ongoing abuse rather than the result of his criminal behavior. Officer, my dogs were traumatized because someone broke into my house and terrorized them during a break-in. I can provide police reports. Ma'am, we have multiple witnesses and photographic evidence. If you don't bring your dogs in voluntarily, we'll be forced to obtain a warrant. After hanging up, I sat on my kitchen floor with Max and Luna, trying not to panic. Losing my dogs would destroy me. They weren't just pets, they were my family. After leaving my abusive ex, they'd been the ones to help me heal, to trust again. That's when I realized the true genius of the Morrison strategy. They understood that threatening my dogs was the fastest way to break me psychologically. They knew I'd do anything to protect Max and Luna, even if it meant accepting their version of events about the party. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Still thinking about our generous offer? Time's running out. Some decisions can't be undone. Another message followed immediately. Shame about Mrs. Chen's dog. Amazing how quickly these investigations can spread to other problematic pet owners. They were telling me exactly what this was, extortion. Accept their pittance and their lies, or watch them systematically destroy everyone around me. I looked down at Max and Luna, their trusting eyes breaking my heart. The Morrisons had just made their biggest mistake. They'd threatened the wrong family members. I had 30 minutes before Animal Control expected me to bring Max and Luna in, and I was not going to let that happen. But I also couldn't run. That would only make me look guilty and give the Morrisons exactly what they wanted. Instead, I did what any good nurse does in a crisis. I called for backup. Emma, I need you to conference call Marcus Chen right now. This is an emergency. Sarah, what's wrong? You sound. The Morrisons are trying to take my dogs. They've weaponized Animal Control, and they're threatening Mrs. Chen's corgi too. Emma, Tommy Chen, the kid who was hospitalized? That's Marcus's son. There was a long pause. Oh my god. Sarah, that changes everything. If Marcus's son was hurt by pills stolen from your house, conference him in. Now. I have evidence that could save both our cases. 3 minutes later, Marcus Chen's voice came through the speaker, tight with controlled anger. Ms. Mitchell, my son is still in the hospital because of drugs that came from your house. Mr. Chen, your son was poisoned by Jake Morrison using medication stolen from my bathroom. I have video evidence of the theft and Jake's plan to frame me for dealing. I played Jake's Snapchat videos over the phone, watching my dogs nervously pace as raised voices echoed from the speaker. When Jake's recorded voice said, "We'll just say the nurse was selling to us," I heard Marcus Chen's sharp intake of breath. Jesus Christ, he whispered. That little bastard. My son almost died because this kid wanted to frame you? It gets worse. The Morrison family is now using Animal Control to threaten my dogs and my neighbor's pets. They're trying to force me to accept blame and a $500 settlement for $4,000 in damages. Those are RICO tactics, Marcus said, his prosecutor instincts kicking in. Extortion, witness tampering, filing false reports. Sarah, can you get to the courthouse in 20 minutes? What about Animal Control? I'm calling them right now. This investigation is about to become part of a much larger criminal case. I was loading Max and Luna into my car when my phone rang. Detective Rodriguez. Ms. Mitchell, I need you to stay exactly where you are. Don't go anywhere with those dogs. My heart stopped. Detective. I just got off the phone with ADHN. We're executing search warrants on the Morrison property in 1 hour. Your dogs aren't going to Animal Control. They're going to be examined by a veterinary expert as evidence of what really happened during that break-in. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in the courthouse lobby with Max and Luna when I saw them, the entire Morrison family walking through the front doors with 2 lawyers in expensive suits. Robert Morrison looked confident, even smug, until he spotted me. Our eyes met across the lobby, and his expression shifted from arrogance to confusion. I was supposed to be cowering at home, not sitting in the courthouse with my dogs and a folder full of evidence. Mrs. Morrison whispered something to her husband, her face pale. Jake hung back behind his parents, no longer looking like the cocky teenager who destroyed my house. For the first time, he looked scared. That's when Marcus Chen emerged from the elevator, his face grim with purpose. He walked straight past the Morrisons without acknowledgement and extended his hand to me. Ms. Mitchell, thank you for coming in. Are you ready to make this family pay for what they've done? The Morrisons' lawyer stepped forward, clearly trying to intercede, but Marcus held up a hand. Save it, counselor. Your clients just graduated from property damage to federal extortion charges. We have everything on record, the threats, the false reports, the systematic harassment campaign. I watched Robert Morrison's face crumble as he realized his family's social connections couldn't save them from what was coming. The war was far from over, but for the first time since Sunday night, I felt like I might actually win. The next few hours felt like being trapped in a legal tornado. Marcus Chen had moved fast, but the Morrisons' lawyers were clearly expensive for a reason. By noon, they'd managed to get Jake released on bail and were already spinning a counter-narrative that made my head spin. I was sitting in Marcus's office, still trying to process everything, when Detective Rodriguez knocked on the door with an expression that made my stomach drop. We have a problem, she said, settling into the chair across from Marcus's desk. The Morrison family just filed a restraining order against you, Sarah. They're claiming harassment and stalking. That's impossible. I haven't even left the courthouse. They have witnesses saying you've been driving past their house repeatedly since Sunday, taking photos, and leaving threatening messages. She slid a folder across the desk. 3 neighbors signed affidavits. My mouth fell open as I scanned the documents. The Hendersons from 2 houses down, claiming I'd been acting erratically and clearly unstable. The Patels across the street, swearing they'd seen me lurking near the Morrison property at midnight Tuesday, when I'd been home nursing Max and Luna through another anxiety attack. These are complete fabrications, I said, but even as I spoke, I realized how this looked. Single woman versus respected family with multiple witnesses. Marcus rubbed his temples. It gets worse. Jake's lawyers are claiming the videos on his phone were taken without his consent, which makes them inadmissible in criminal court. They're arguing entrapment. Entrapment? He posted them publicly on social media, which his legal team is now claiming was done under duress because you threatened him. Detective Rodriguez looked apologetic. Sarah, I believe you. But they built a very convincing alternative timeline. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Restraining order goes into effect in 1 hour. Hope your dogs like staying indoors. Wouldn't want any more incidents during walks. The threat was subtle but clear. Even with the restraining order, they were still targeting Max and Luna. There's something else, Marcus said quietly. My son Tommy, he doesn't remember much from that night. The drug combination caused some short-term memory issues. Without his testimony about where he got the pills, they're going to say he got them from me directly. His medical records show he had anxiety medication in his system that matches your prescription exactly. Jake's lawyers will argue that's proof of ongoing distribution. I felt the walls closing in again. Every piece of evidence I thought would save me was being twisted into proof of guilt. The Morrisons had turned my own medical knowledge against me, my professional reputation into a liability, and now they were isolating me from the one prosecutor who might have believed my story. What about the damage to my house? The stolen belongings? Civil matter, Detective Rodriguez said. And with the restraining order, you can't pursue Jake directly. You'd have to go through insurance claims and civil court, which could take years. Years I don't have, I whispered, thinking about my mortgage, my vet bills for traumatized dogs, the $4,000 in damage I couldn't afford to repair. Marcus leaned forward. Sarah, I want to help you. But my son's hospitalization puts me in an impossible position. If this goes to trial and it comes out that I prosecuted the case personally. Conflict of interest. They'll claim vendetta and get everything thrown out. I'm going to have to recuse myself. Transfer the case to another ADA who doesn't know you, doesn't know the full story. As I walked out of the courthouse an hour later, Max and Luna flanking me nervously, I realized the Morrisons had played this perfectly. They'd isolated me from my strongest ally while building an unshakable wall of false witnesses and legal technicalities. But as I looked down at my dogs, still trembling from their ordeal, I felt something crystallize in my chest. They'd made one crucial miscalculation. They'd assumed I'd fight fair. The restraining order went into effect at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday that felt like the longest day of my life. I was officially barred from coming within 500 feet of any Morrison family member or their property, which meant I couldn't even walk Max and Luna down our own street without risking arrest. But that evening, something unexpected happened that changed everything. My doorbell rang at 7:30 p.m., and through the peephole I saw a teenage girl I didn't recognize, maybe 16, with dark hair and nervous eyes. She kept glancing over her shoulder like she was afraid of being followed. Are you the nurse? She asked when I cracked the door open. The one who's in trouble because of Jake Morrison? Who's asking? My name's Riley. I was at your house Saturday night. I'm the girl in the video with Jake. My heart started pounding. This was the girl I'd seen on Jake's Snapchat story, the one who'd been sitting next to him when he divided my pills into baggies. Riley, if you're here because someone sent you. No one sent me. I came because. She looked around nervously again. Can I come in? Please? I think someone's following me. Against my better judgment, I let her inside. Max and Luna immediately went to her, tails wagging tentatively. Animals were usually good judges of character, and they seemed to sense she wasn't a threat. Jake doesn't know I'm here, she said, settling onto my damaged couch while my dogs pressed against her legs. His parents definitely don't know. But I heard what they're doing to you, and it's not right. What exactly did you hear? My mom works at the country club where Mrs. Morrison has lunch with her friends. She heard Mrs. Morrison bragging about how they were going to teach that uppity nurse her place. Riley's voice shook slightly. She said you were getting too comfortable in a neighborhood above your station. The casual cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about avoiding responsibility for the party damage, it was about putting me back in what they considered my proper social position. Riley, why are you telling me this? If they find out you came here. Because Jake lied about you giving permission for the party. I was there when he called you Friday night, I heard the whole conversation. You specifically said no parties, no drinking, just take care of the dogs. She pulled out her phone. I recorded some stuff that night because I thought it was funny at the time. Now I realize it's evidence. She showed me a video I hadn't seen before, Jake on my back deck around midnight Saturday, talking to someone off camera. The nurse has no idea what's happening. By the time she gets back, we'll have cleaned out her good stuff and she can't prove anything. Rich people problems, you know? There's more, Riley continued, swiping to another video. This is Jake talking to Tommy Chin right before Tommy took those pills. The video was shaky, clearly taken without Jake's knowledge. But the audio was crystal clear. Dude, this cocktail will mess you up in the best way. The nurse lady had premium stuff, anxiety meds, painkillers, the works. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. Tommy's voice was slurred but audible. Are you sure it's safe to mix all this? Totally safe. I looked it up online. Besides, if anything goes wrong, we just say the nurse gave them to us directly. My dad's lawyer says that's an easy win. I stared at the phone screen, hardly believing what I was hearing. This wasn't just evidence of Jake's guilt, it was proof that he'd planned from the beginning to frame me if anything went wrong. Riley, this video could save my entire case. Why are you risking everything to help me? She was quiet for a long moment, stroking Luna's fur. Because I know what it's like when rich people decide to destroy you. My family went through something similar last year, different circumstances, but same playbook. They'll keep escalating until you have nothing left. What happened to your family? My dad lost his job, we had to move, my parents got divorced. All because we tried to hold the wrong person accountable. She looked up at me with eyes that seemed much older than 16. But you're still fighting. That means there's still hope. As Riley prepared to leave, sneaking out through my back door to avoid being seen, she pressed something into my hand. Jake's having another party this Friday. At the Westfield College house where his cousin Brad lives. He's been bragging that he's going to celebrate beating the crazy nurse lady. It was an address written on a scrap of paper. Riley, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Someone has to stop him before he ruins more lives. After she left, I sat in my kitchen staring at the address, a new plan beginning to form in my mind. The Morrisons thought they'd cornered me with their restraining order and their wall of lies. They thought I was trapped, isolated, and defeated. They were about to learn that cornering a nurse only made her more dangerous. The next morning, I woke up to find my car windshield smashed and drug dealer spray painted across my garage door in bright red letters. Max and Luna were barking frantically at something in the backyard, and when I looked out, I saw more destruction, my flower beds torn up, my fence gate hanging off its hinges. But it was the note taped to my front door that made my blood run cold. This is just the beginning. Drop your lies or it gets much worse. I was photographing the damage when Mrs. Chen appeared at my side, her face pale with worry. Sarah, they came for 2 more dogs on our street last night. The Kowalski's retriever and that sweet pit bull mix the college students own. Animal control said they're expanding the investigation. My hand shook as I lowered my phone. The Morrisons weren't just targeting me anymore, they were systematically terrorizing the entire neighborhood to isolate me completely. Soon, no one would dare support me for fear of losing their own pets. There's something else, Mrs. Chen whispered, glancing around nervously. My grandson works at the courthouse. He says the Morrisons' lawyer has been meeting with the judge assigned to your case. Private meetings. That's not legal. Legal and reality are 2 different things when you have that kind of money, dear. After Mrs. Chen left, I called Emma in desperation. They're escalating. Property destruction, intimidating witnesses, possibly bribing judges. Emma, I'm in over my head. Sarah, maybe it's time to cut your losses. Take whatever settlement they're offering and move somewhere else. Move where? With what money? They've destroyed my credit, my professional reputation. Even if I wanted to run, I can't afford to. Then what's your alternative? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like they're going to bury you. That's when my call waiting beeped. Unknown number. I have to take this. Miss Mitchell? The voice was elderly, shaky. This is Harold Morrison. Robert's father. Jake's grandfather. I'd seen him occasionally in their yard, a frail man who seemed uncomfortable with his family's ostentatiousness. Mr. Morrison, if you're calling to threaten me, I'm calling to apologize. And to warn you. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. They're planning something for tonight. Something that will make it impossible for you to fight back. My heart hammered. What kind of something? I can't say over the phone. But Miss Mitchell, you need to understand, my son and his wife, they don't just destroy people. They erase them completely. I've seen them do it before. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. Jake's own grandfather was warning me about his family's plans, which meant tonight's escalation was going to be worse than vandalism or false reports. That's when I noticed the white van parked across the street, the same van that had been there yesterday evening. As I watched, a man with a camera telephoto lens adjusted his position to get a clearer shot of my house. They were documenting my every move, building a case that I was violating the restraining order or engaging in suspicious behavior. Every trip to the mailbox, every time I let my dogs into the yard, every visitor who came to my door, it was all being recorded and probably taken out of context. I was trapped in my own home, under constant surveillance, while they prepared some kind of final attack that Jake's grandfather was too scared to even mention over the phone. But as I looked at Riley's videos on my phone and then at the address she'd given me for Jake's Friday party, I realized something important. They'd made a critical error in their surveillance strategy. They were so focused on watching me, they'd forgotten to watch their own backs. I spent Thursday afternoon researching everything I could about surveillance laws and recording devices, using my neighbor's Wi-Fi since the Morrisons had somehow gotten my internet service temporarily suspended for suspicious activity. The white van was still parked across the street, but now I noticed a second vehicle, a black sedan that switched positions every few hours. They were building a case for something bigger than harassment charges. At 3 p.m., my phone rang. It was Janet from the hospital. Sarah, I need to ask you some difficult questions. We've received some concerning reports about your conduct, and HR wants to speak with you tomorrow. My stomach dropped. What kind of reports? Drug theft allegations. Patient confidentiality violations. There's also a claim that you've been selling prescription information to dealers. Janet's voice was strained, she clearly didn't want to be making this call. I fought for you, but with a police investigation ongoing. Janet, those are complete lies. I can prove. Sarah, just be prepared for the worst. They're talking about suspension pending investigation. Without pay. After she hung up, I sat staring at my phone as the full scope of the Morrison strategy became clear. They weren't just trying to frame me for the house party, they were systematically destroying every aspect of my life. My career, my home, my reputation, my pets, my neighbors' trust. By the time they were finished, I'd have nothing left to fight with and nowhere to run. But that's when I remembered something Harold Morrison had said. I've seen them do it before. This wasn't their first time destroying someone. I spent the next 2 hours digging through online archives, searching for any patterns in the Morrisons' legal history. What I found made my blood run cold. Over the past decade, there had been 3 other families in various neighborhoods who'd had conflicts with the Morrisons. All 3 had eventually moved away quietly after facing similar campaigns of harassment and false accusations. The Hendersons, the neighbors who'd signed an affidavit against me, used to live next to the Morrisons in their previous neighborhood. According to property records, they bought their current house just 6 months ago. The Patels had an even more interesting history. They'd faced foreclosure 3 years ago before suddenly receiving an influx of cash that saved their home. The Morrisons had bought their witnesses. But it was the 4th case that made everything click into place. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, a pediatrician who'd lived 2 houses down from the Morrisons 4 years ago, had her medical license suspended after allegations of inappropriate conduct with young patients. The accusations had come from parents of children she'd treated, parents who all happened to be friends with the Morrison family. Dr. Warren had fought the charges for 8 months before the stress destroyed her marriage and her practice. She'd eventually moved to another state and was working as a school nurse, her career permanently damaged by allegations that were never proven but never fully cleared either. I found her current address through the state nursing board directory and called her workplace. Dr. Warren? My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm a nurse in Connecticut, and I think the Morrison family is doing to me what they did to you. The long pause on the other end told me everything I needed to know. How did you find me? Her voice was barely above a whisper. Public records. Dr. Warren, I need to know how they destroyed your case. What evidence they manufactured, who they bought off, what their endgame strategy was. Miss Mitchell, you don't understand what you're dealing with. These people don't just ruin careers, they ruin lives. Completely. Permanently. They've already started. I'm losing my job tomorrow, my house is under surveillance, and they've turned my neighbors against me. Another long pause. Meet me halfway between our locations. There's a diner off I-95 in Old Saybrook. Tomorrow night at 9. Come alone, and make sure you're not followed. Dr. Warren. And Miss Mitchell? If you're recording this call or if this is some kind of setup, know that I have nothing left to lose. They already took everything that mattered to me. As I hung up, I realized I was about to learn exactly how deep this conspiracy went. And whether there was any way to survive it. The meeting with Dr. Warren never happened. I was getting ready to leave for Old Saybrook Friday evening when my phone rang. Unknown number, but when I answered, I heard Dr. Warren's voice, shaky, terrified. Don't come. They know. I don't know how, but they know about our call. Her words came in a rush. Sarah, they're at my apartment building. Right now. Black sedan, same license plate you probably saw at your house. My blood turned to ice. How could they possibly? It doesn't matter how. What matters is that you understand, there is no beating them. There's only surviving long enough to escape. The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen, staring at my phone as the full implications hit me. The Morrisons' reach extended far beyond Connecticut. They had the resources to track down a woman 4 states away within hours of learning about her existence. That's when I heard cars pulling up outside. Through my window, I watched 3 police cruisers park in my driveway. Detective Rodriguez emerged from the lead car, but her expression wasn't the same neutral professionalism I'd seen before. She looked grim, almost apologetic. I opened the door before she could knock. Detective, if this is about the restraining order, I haven't left my property. Sarah Mitchell, you're under arrest for distribution of controlled substances and conspiracy to commit drug trafficking. She held up a warrant. You have the right to remain silent. The world tilted sideways as I processed her words. Distribution? Conspiracy? What evidence could you possibly have? Multiple witnesses have come forward stating you've been selling prescription medications for months. We also have evidence of large cash deposits in your bank account that coincide with alleged drug sales. That's impossible. I can show you my bank records. We've already reviewed your financial records. 3 deposits totaling $8,000 over the past 6 months, all in cash, with no legitimate source documented. My mind raced. I'd made exactly 3 large cash deposits this year, tips I'd saved from working private duty nursing jobs, my tax refund, and money from selling my grandmother's jewelry after the divorce. All perfectly legal, all documented. But as the handcuffs clicked around my wrists, I realized they'd found a way to make legitimate transactions look suspicious. My dogs, I said desperately as they led me toward the police car. I can't leave my dogs alone. Animal control is already en route, Detective Rodriguez said quietly. Given the charges, they'll be held pending investigation. I watched through the police car window as Max and Luna pressed against our living room window, their faces confused and scared. This was their worst nightmare, watching me disappear again, just like when Jake had locked them in the closet. The drive to the police station passed in a blur, but one detail caught my attention. We passed Jake Morrison on the street, leaning against an expensive sports car with 2 friends. He saw the police car and actually waved, a smug grin spreading across his face. At the station, I was processed like any other criminal. Fingerprints, mugshot, inventory of personal belongings. But it was during the booking process that I learned the true scope of their final gambit. Your arraignment is Monday morning, the desk sergeant explained. Bail hearing will depend on flight risk assessment. Flight risk? You've been charged with running a prescription drug ring with interstate connections. The DA's office considers you a significant flight risk, especially given your access to multiple state nursing licenses. Multiple state licenses. I'd maintained my nursing certification in 3 states to pick up travel assignments during college, something I'd mentioned in exactly one place, my employment application at the hospital. Someone with access to confidential HR files had fed that information to the prosecution. As I sat in the holding cell Friday night, watching other women cycle through on various charges, I finally understood what Harold Morrison had tried to warn me about. His family didn't just destroy people's reputations or careers. They destroyed people so completely that even the legal system became a weapon against them. But as I stared at the concrete walls of my cell, I realized something the Morrisons hadn't counted on. They'd finally made a mistake that I could prove. And I had exactly 68 hours until my arraignment to figure out how to use it. Saturday morning in the holding cell, I was allowed 1 phone call. Most people would call a lawyer, but I had a different idea. I called Riley. Sarah? Oh my God, everyone's talking about your arrest. Jake's been celebrating all night. Riley, listen carefully. Remember that party address you gave me? Jake's victory party tonight? Yeah, but you're in jail. How could you possibly? Is he still bragging about beating me? Nonstop. He's telling everyone how his family handled the crazy nurse. Sarah, he's been showing people something on his phone. Some kind of video that he says proves you're guilty. My heart hammered. What kind of video? I couldn't see it clearly, but Jake said it shows you selling pills to college kids. He keeps saying it's going to seal the deal if you somehow make bail. A video that didn't exist until after my arrest. Fresh evidence to ensure my conviction. Riley, I need you to do something incredibly brave. And incredibly dangerous. 2 hours later, my court-appointed attorney finally showed up. Public defender, overworked, already convinced I was guilty based on the evidence file. Ms. Mitchell, I'll be honest, this case looks bad. Multiple witnesses, financial records, and now video evidence. The DA is offering a plea deal, 5 years with possibility of parole in 3. I'm not pleading guilty to something I didn't do. Then you're looking at 15 to 20 years. These are serious charges. What if I told you the video evidence was manufactured yesterday? After I was already in custody? He looked up from his files for the first time. That would be evidence tampering. But proving it would require catching them in the act. That evening, while Jake Morrison celebrated his victory with a house party full of witnesses, Riley sat in the corner with her phone, recording everything. I learned about it Sunday morning when my attorney rushed back to the jail, his expression completely transformed. Sarah, I just received a very interesting phone call. It seems Jake Morrison spent last night bragging to a room full of people about how he and his father manufactured evidence against you. He placed a tablet on the table between us, showing me Riley's secretly recorded videos from the party. Jake's voice was crystal clear as he explained to his friends how they'd used deepfake technology and old security footage to create a video of me selling pills to students who had never met me. But this is the best part, my attorney continued, swiping to another video. He explains how his father bribed 3 witnesses and manufactured those bank deposit records by having cash deposited into your account without your knowledge, then withdrawing it through ATM skimming devices. I watched Jake Morrison, drunk on wine and arrogance, confess to federal crimes while a room full of people recorded him on their phones. There's more. Apparently, your arrest was supposed to be the grand finale, but Jake couldn't resist gloating. He told the entire party how they'd done this to 4 other families, including a doctor whose life they destroyed through manufactured child abuse allegations. My hands shook as I processed what this meant. Will this be enough? Sarah, this is enough to bring down their entire family operation. Federal prosecutors are already reviewing the case for RICO violations. Jake Morrison was supposed to appear for a deposition this morning. Instead, he was arrested at 6 a.m. on conspiracy and evidence tampering charges. Monday morning's arraignment was unlike anything I could have imagined. I walked into court expecting to plead not guilty and hope for reasonable bail. Instead, I watched the Morrison family's lawyer inform the judge that his clients were withdrawing all charges against me and issuing a public apology. But the federal prosecutor had a different announcement. The Morrison family was now under investigation for running what amounted to a domestic terrorism operation, systematically destroying families who challenged their authority. 3 months later, I was back in my house, fully repaired and paid for by the Morrisons' insurance settlement. Max and Luna had recovered from their trauma with help from an excellent veterinary behaviorist. Mrs. Chin got Pepper back, along with a substantial settlement from the wrongful seizure. Jake Morrison pled guilty to 14 federal charges and was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. His parents faced RICO charges that would likely keep them in court for the next decade. But the best part came 6 months later, when Dr. Elizabeth Warren called me. Sarah, I wanted to thank you. The federal investigation cleared my name completely. The medical board is reinstating my license and expunging my record. Dr. Warren, I should be thanking you. Your warning probably saved my life. No, she said quietly. Your courage to keep fighting saved both our lives. And probably saved the lives of whoever they would have targeted next. As I hung up and looked around my peaceful home, Max and Luna sleeping contentedly on their favorite couch, I realized something important. The Morrisons had been right about one thing: some battles aren't worth fighting. But they'd been completely wrong about which battles those were. Some battles aren't worth fighting because you might lose. Others aren't worth fighting because you've already won.